Good afternoon or morning as it may be for you. I am Martin Whelan-Hind and I will be running through a Teams lesson demo of what we do at Stoke Newington School, the pros, the cons and how we feel we're doing with them. First of all is why are we doing it? We feel it gives us a well-being assessment of the pupils, it gives us that extra contact point, it allows us to communicate with the students, it allows us to explain things and troubleshoot. Also brings in a motivation factor which we think is missing from the lack of face-to-face that pupils are getting at the moment. We also believe it allows for an initial and quick assessment for learning which improves teaching rather than work being handed in and then fed back to at far later a stage than what you would get during a normal lesson. Challenges we've had: Wi-Fi is a big issue as well as devices. A large number of our students are sharing devices with parents or with siblings. Unfortunately, that means that access to Teams lessons is reduced. That does reduce the attendance, it decreases in time, and overall we're getting a decrease in contact time than we normally have in lessons. Also, we've got glitches and there's an overall engagement issue. We don't have pupils in front of us. We can't judge sort of how they're getting on in terms of sort of how they're feeling or not quite as well, which means that trying to get them engaged is a little bit more challenging. Also, as there's not necessarily an end date to this crisis, engaging and pushing pupils to their future when their future seems so far away can be quite a challenge. This is our current timetable, which has generally around 1 or 2 lessons per subject, but not too many more, because going over that would then cause the issues with the sharing of devices that we've already had. It also allows students a bit of time to actually do the work that they need to do between lessons. So what I'm going to show you today is a little bit of actually what a lesson looks like in terms of Teams teaching. This first instance is going to be a maths lesson, and it's a dialogue between a teacher and a student. The teacher is speaking, but the students are working on a messaging board. You'll also see a self-made PowerPoint by the teacher with a few photographs of her own working to help the students through the work.
Values of A, and A is not equal to 1. So Laura's just asked why it can't equal 1. So I want you to just think for a second, what happens if A does equal 1? Right, so if A does equal 1, X would be equal to log to base 1 of 1. Writing that in index form, so the base is 1, so I've put 1 to the power of X equals 1. Now if you think about that, 1 to the power of X equals 1, X could actually take, and I put there to start with, I put a number of values, it can actually take an infinite number of values. What values could X take if A was 1? So I want you to, again, think about...
So if you were a pupil in that lesson, you would then be answering that question through the message bar.
30 seconds, think about what X could be.
Is from myself, which is from a chemistry lesson. In this case, I'm trying to mimic the ability to be able to write on a board. One of the issues we currently have at the moment is being able to sort of essentially model what the students need to do. In this case, you will see a student who isn't necessarily fully paying attention, but does then clock on to what she needs to do afterwards. Yes. Okay. What we will do is a challenge question then, just to mix it up a little bit, just to make sure you understand what I've just said. Before we move on to the next question, I will give you a question. So maybe I'll put this in the chat bar once I've gone through it. But we will go for a question based off the Harbour process. So I'm going to give you a question based off the Harbour process. Go back, share video. So the Harbour process is our N2 plus H2 going to NH3. I'm not going to balance that. I'm going to let you balance that. Let's go for Halima. Give me your favourite concentration of N2.
Sorry?
Give me a concentration of N2. Any number.
10.
10. So the concentration of N2 is equal to 10 mole per dm cubed. So as you can see, I'm writing on a sheet of paper, which allows then the pupils to sort of see me modelling it. Once they've been given the question, they then answer the question, and then I went through it to check to show those who couldn't actually do the work or had struggled with that question, an example of how to do it.
The concentration of heat.
The next example is a little bit of Wojciech, which I'm sure we all want at this time of the day. So, a bit of Wojciech, and it is given to you by the drama department. So this is a Year 12 drama. And in this case, they're doing a run-through of a script from a Wojciech play.
Evening. I put something by.
He leaves.
That man, so haunted by everything, didn't even stop to look at his child. Thinking's wound his mind up like a watch spring. It'll break one of these days. Why are you so quiet, baby? Are you frightened? It's so dark you could be going blind. No light. The street lamp usually shines in all the time. These shadows gather in like dead men. It's horrible.
She hurries out with the child, I think.
So in that case, you saw that the script was being shared via Teams on the teacher's computer to show the pupil sort of the script, and she was then doing her drama as we went.
That's the end of scene 2.
Next example we're going to have a look at is actually not involving students. It's to try and bring alive coursework. So we've got to try and sort of going through things, trying to get them to sort of think about the things that they should think about in terms of choosing their coursework and choosing their coursework title. In this case, instead of you including the students, this is a video created by the English department as a sort of a way into the coursework to bring it alive a little bit more than just setting them the work would do.
How do I choose my coursework title? How do I decide what to write about?
Okay, so first of all, you've got the list of coursework titles. You want to pick a section that you feel like you're going to have a lot to say on. So you kind of have to visualize the essay and what kinds of things you'll talk about in it while you're picking the titles, because I really love page 35, but actually in terms of an essay, I don't really have that much I can write about it. 40 to 42 are much more sort of rich with language and things like that. So you kind of want to pick a section that you found interesting, that you liked, that you understood, and then also think about sort of the bigger picture. Will I have enough to say on this? I've had students in the past who sort of knew the end was really important, so they chose it, but actually they didn't really get it. So then they kind of tried to write about something they didn't really understand and it all flopped and they had to restart. So
some solid advice from the English department there.
Choose something you get that you like.
Next example is a pupil presentation. This was from a PE lesson. So in this case, we're going to see a presentation given by a pupil. And this presentation was made by the pupil, shared with the teacher, and then was presented to the class. And I would expect all of you know how to pronounce the initial part of this.
This one, I'm not even going to try and pronounce it.
Proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation.
That's how you pronounce it. So it aims to desensitize the stretch reflex to increase the range of motion about a joint. So it follows a 3-step tactic.
So she presents a PowerPoint that she's made about something. So essentially, this is pupil teaching and pupil presentation. The final example we have is
okay. So
this is a example of peer assessment. So this is where the pupils are assessing each other. In this case, it's our first interview practice, so a little bit rusty so far, but it's our first interview practice in terms of what sort of questions you could get in an interview for a university.
At the moment, I'm reading Junk by William Burroughs. I'm finding it interesting because it's kind of about his heroin addiction. But what's interesting is it was written in the 40s, so he was like quite ahead of his time. And I mean, personally, although I've found it interesting, it's not the type of book I'd usually read. I think for me, it feels more like a good documentation of an aspect of life from that era that went mostly like untalked about. But I think personally I prefer literature that's more kind of philosophical or like more fictiony.
Cool. I like that. I think you sort of went quite deep on that. Let's go with who's not had a. Adam, what did you think of that?
I thought it was really good because she was quite critical of the book as well as saying what she found interesting. So when you're critical, you can probably go deeper on the subject. I thought that's really good.
Yeah.
So the first example of as I say, our first attempt of doing sort of interviews for Oxbridge and sort of Russell Group universities. So that was essentially a little bit of into our.
Very good. Yeah, and I think that's a very good point. Is that
you're up to myself. That's a little end to what our team's lessons look like at Stone Newton School. It's built up over time. We are getting better at it, but here's some of the quick feedback. This is from the staff, is that it's not really a replacement for face-to-face. We do need that. That is vitally important that comes back as soon as we can. That it does help us to, we've probably got a lot better on things that we had available to us. Our internet sort of searching of videos, sharing of videos and things like that has been very good. The ability for the pupils to watch recorded lessons, watching them back has been very useful. It means pupils who didn't get things the first time around can see them again. And the most popular thing that the staff mentioned was the mute button. The mute button means that you can get through so much more. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to fit that into our classrooms when we do arrive back in school. Feedback from pupils, it's better than just setting work. It is that sort of, it means there's a little bit more dialogue. That actually this is giving them more time to actually do the work. We do lots of lessons during the school day, and actually in some ways this is giving them more time to do the work they need to do between all of the lessons rather than having a full teaching timetable. But finally, probably the most important point, and was made a few times, is that it makes me feel connected like normal school does. And I think that's the vital thing as we go through this. Is Teams is a tool for teaching, but it's a tool for helping students' well-being as much as anything. Thank you for listening. I hope you found this interesting, and I will try and now turn off the recording. Goodbye.